Welcome to Humans of Magic. My guest this time is Sam, a.k.a. Rhystic Studies. Sam is one of the biggest video essayists and YouTubers for Magic the Gathering. The timing worked out really well because both Sam and I happen to be going to MagicCon Amsterdam at the end of this month. So if you're going to be in Amsterdam, definitely come by and say hi. I will be there as a feature creator. I will also have my first ever MagicCon panel called Global Humans of Magic. I'm going to be talking about the global nature of this game and what has inspired me to create over many years of living and breathing Magic the Gathering. Now, back to the conversation itself. Sam, as always, was an excellent guest. This is the third time that he's been on Humans of Magic, and every time we have a conversation, it just reminds me of how great it is to talk to him. The music analogies and metaphors are out in full force. We just have a lovely conversation. Use the timestamps in the episode if you want to jump to specific topics. Sitting down with Sam is like sitting down with an old friend. Just very pleasant to talk to. And it's just been really fun because over the years, Sam's evolved a lot as a creator. I've certainly evolved as a creator. It really does remind me once again of the power of podcasting, of sitting down with another human and just talking. Talking it out with somebody is something that I think we need to do more as a society or as a group of Magic players or a group of social animals. Anyhow, I really enjoyed this. I hope you do as well. This is my Humans of Magic episode with Sam, a.k.a. Rhystic Studies. Sam, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, James. It's good to see you again.
How does it feel to do two podcasts in 2 days? I know the first one was a monologue, but are
Yeah, you
you
got
are
that.
you now in your podcasting prime?
I just feel like actually I did an interview last week at Dallas, and the week before, or maybe 2 weeks before, I had another interview. So I think it's just become part of my weekend routine is that I'm talking into a microphone in some form. So to be honest with you, this is the coziest I've been in a while. So it's not a matter of quantity anymore. It's just a matter of pace.
Okay. Because I heard your latest Rhystic Studies cast, I felt like I also needed to show up with a collared shirt,
Yeah.
knowing that you would be coming prepared with that. So I was just like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna just show up in a t-shirt, It's this it's just something that maybe let's get right into it. Like, there's just something really interesting because I know the last time we recorded a podcast together, it was probably 2 years ago.
hmm
And part of the reason that I didn't ask you to record again is A, I know you're a super busy person and you've got a lot going on. But B, I've created this weird, even though I have known you through our recordings, there's a weird parasocial thing that happens now because I am a regular listener to the Rhystic cast. So I almost feel like you're in my ear. I think that's kind of the way things go. And I've also just really adjusted my podcast rotations. So you're one of a few podcasts I listen to now. And I don't know, like, do you ever get feedback like that from your fans? It's just where you, they know you so well, but you don't really know them. It's a one-sided conversation or megaphone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that the format of that podcast specifically has always just been a way to fill in the gaps between the very formal videos for anyone that wants to listen. So it's not just like a way for me to brain dump on a bunch of ideas that fit that medium. I kind of reflected a little bit on my output last year and realized that the videos are so scripted and so formal that so much goes unsaid or kind of. I don't get to touch on everything I want to in the videos. So the podcast allows this free form kind of fill in the blank, not just with my life as maybe you understood from the recent episode, but sometimes it's about the stuff that gets cut out from the videos. And then I also wanted to do something a little more semi-formal with the written word, the kind of stuff that you don't see on the script side, which is what breeded the Substack. And I'm trying to think of these three outlets as different media and shapes of thought and ways I can communicate with the audience so that they can fill in the blanks because the videos are so formal and more or less infrequent. So I don't know if it's about if there's a parasocial element, I think that's natural, and I think that's a normal part of like you know, tuning into media that's produced by quote unquote regular folk in this day and age, right? Or friends or whatever have you. But I think that the format of the monologue kind of does that intrinsically, It feels like I'm speaking directly to you. But yeah, there is no return. It's something I think about a lot. I voiced this with Carrie about 6 to 8 months ago. Anytime someone follows me on Twitter, I just kind of look at their bio, and I'm in a position where, I get a lot of followers every day. The bios to me are sometimes outrageous, like so funny, like hilarious. People get really creative with their bios, but I've kind of massed together this very strange, like alien amalgamation of people that follow me, and I only know them from 1 to 2 sentences in their Twitter bio. And you wouldn't believe the range that the folks that follow me. And I'm a, we're in a niche of a niche, but I always thought it would be a cool art project to just like flip the script and say, like, you all know quite a bit about me, and all I know about you is the one line in your Twitter bio. And then you just compile all of these completely unrelated Twitter bios together, I think it's a funny way of how we present ourselves online and the internet persona at large. But that's been a brainworm in my head for a long time of exactly what you're speaking about, where folks come up to me at the con and they feel like they know me because of how I've made my stuff and how I present myself online, and all I know about them is like one line in a Twitter bio,
Mm-hmm. Or even more fun, they might say, I am whomever on Twitter, and then even if you know their Twitter bio, it really doesn't go beyond that, right? It's their tweets, and chances are they're not making videos or having a Substack or having their own monologue of a podcast. So that's a really, I don't know. I think sometimes I think too much about this kind of stuff, and I just realize as I'm listening to your cast that I'm in it. Like I listen to the cast, I watch your video essays, obviously. I read your Substack, including Signal Pest and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, and I guess I'm on your Discord as well, where you have a lot of passionate fans who are talking about you, around you. And that's another thing I'm curious about is how do you, assuming that the patrons or the folks on Discord are kind of a even more hardcore segment, how do you maintain a relationship with them? Because do you feel like can you be friends with them? Do you feel like you have to keep a certain distance? How do you think about that?
Yeah, the relationship with patrons has become one of distance more than like kinship, just because again, it comes back to quantity. Like at the very beginning of the Patreon, there was 8 patrons, and there was more of a dialogue and a sort of like, hey, we're in a small room together. And now it's more of like a segment of this whole operation. In general, I don't really spend a lot of time on Discord because I find it so overwhelming and a lot of unnecessary. I'm already in conversations and emails. Like, I don't want to be in more conversations in my life. I'm trying to reduce all of my digital conversations if I can help it. So Discord is just not for me, but like, yeah, I'll pop into the Discord here and there. I really love when folks start to bond between one another over other topics. I think that's like the best result of the Discord, is less talking about me and the videos and more talking about similar interests. I think that's a cool phenomenon. But, the Discord could be better. There's a lot of ways you can improve that, but kind of in my position as a creator, it's like, where do I want to spend my time and efforts? And the Discord is there for folks who want it, and I just wanted to provide a platform for that. But as far as relationship goes, yeah, it's like I have to just be a little bit of a kind of a fly on the wall, but sometimes I pretend I'm not there, and so that folks can actually speak freely without me. It's almost like it reminds me of being like a teacher again, where I'll leave the room for 2 minutes and wonder what the students will say, because I'll certainly act a certain way when I'm in the room, but the conversation shifts ever so slightly when I leave. So
To me, it sounds like another form of reading the comments on your YouTube videos, or on one's YouTube videos, almost. It's like,
yeah,
you want to have a little bit of distance. You're not trying to reply to every single comment, but every once in a while you'll glance at it just because, right? I mean, it's a connection.
Yeah, and it's at least I know that the folks in the Discord are coming to the presentation in good faith, and that's kind of a difference. Is like I can actually engage a little more because at the very least these folks know where I'm coming from and really want to maybe have a chewier conversation or throw a lighthearted comment my way, whatever. YouTube comments, they run the gamut of that sincerity to total disconnect. So you get to decide how you interact with those.
Mm-hmm. So going back to what you said about being interviewed, what are some things that people are asking you about? Is it just like tell me about Rhystic Studies, or is it folks within the magic space or outside of? Because I assume it's a combination because of your association now with Basilisk and things outside of magic.
Yeah, totally. So last week it was an interview with a gentleman called Ahmed who runs a YouTube channel called StarCraft Historian, and that's kind of his online persona. That was a live interview in Dallas in the media room. He set up his camera, and he was really well prepared. Like, I think he follows Magic kind of tangentially, but his main focus is StarCraft. And this was a StarCraft 2 event, so we crossed paths because he's done some interviews with the Basilisk team, and he was like, "Hey, would you be down for it?" I'm like, "Hell yeah!" So we got together, and he prepared a very like well-tailored list of questions. I was surprised, even if he's not really involved in Magic, his questions and his research on the back end was like super pro. So I'm excited for that interview to come out. Before that, I've done a couple of other shows for friends, like not necessarily comedy shows, but maybe more conversational stuff. I did an episode of Am I the Bullcast with Mike Karatza, and that was fun. That's more shooting the shit, less than a formal interview. But yeah, I find myself in these scenarios quite often, and I it's just part of being online. You have to like, not that you have to do this, but I love doing this stuff with folks that I know, again, have my best interest and aren't trying to corner me or whatever. So
Have you been cornered before, or have there been interviews that are a little unexpected in some way?
not at all. I mean, again, I think we're in a really respectful space, all things considered, and it's not as toxic as it could be compared to what I see in like video games, for example. We have our disagreements in Magic and some tensions in Magic, but for the most part, like, folks are really, really respectful and really kind, at least to me, and they have been for 10 years. I haven't really ever been in a position where I have to like actually and actively turn off a camera or walk away or like send a nasty email, that kind of thing. At least the folks in my circles, we get along really well, and I've never had to worry about that kind of thing.
That's good. That's good. Not to make this all about me, but I had a spicy situation a few weeks back where I interviewed somebody, and it kind of went a little haywire. But I think I found a way to salvage the interview. But I definitely have been in situations. Maybe it's just the nature of the beast. You just have, there's some interactions. Maybe it just wasn't a good day for me or a good day for them. It just didn't quite line up because I think as a creative person, I think when your output is just something solo, I think it's a little bit easier to control your off days. But when you're making a product that involves doing it with somebody else, you can definitely have those off days. So you're in a very fortunate spot. That's really all I wanted to say, is where you can control your destiny, right? Like, a lot of what you're doing is solo, and it seems like you've designed it to be solo in nature.
Yeah, I think that's just been the nature of me as a creative individual. I've always not envied, but really admired folks who work together. I often liken Rhystic Studies to a band, and I'm more of like a solo producer. I do everything by myself, but at the end of the day, that gets a little lonely. Sometimes I want some creative pushback or some creative tension, and like the small moments where I've gotten to really collaborate with creators, it's been so thrilling. But to be able to like be in a rock band, it's not just being able to play music together, it's also about like maintaining relationships. And I've admired those folks who can do that for 10, 15, 20 years on end, because it's not just like real life also matters when it comes to the rock band thing. So I'm not surprised that you've run into some tougher situations because you cast a much wider net. Like you're talking with everybody, and that's something that's admirable about what your pursuit is and what you've been doing for years is your willingness and curiosity to speak with everyone just about anything. And it's not that it's not that it was manicured to be so insular for me. It's just I I have such an executive function when it comes to creative stuff that I don't want to wait around for people, Like I want to make this thing, I'm going to go make it. It's kind of like it's reflective of my upbringing. I just took care of myself a lot and I just entertained myself a lot and I just did a lot of stuff by myself. So, that carries on throughout your life in various ways, but for me it's like, yeah, I don't really want to. I could build out a team, but like still, as far as it goes, like I love working and in the way that I work, and it's been fruitful. So I'll just keep riding that until that that proverbial rock band presents itself in some form that attracts me. So
Have you been approached? It's almost a leading question. I'm assuming you must have been approached to collaborate with other YouTubers or other. I mean, I know
yeah,
you're doing stuff with the prof, but I'm just thinking beyond that. Are there actual collaboration pitches where you're doing a video essay with another video essayist, or maybe even outside of magic and non-magic together, or something like that?
yeah, I think that the most fruitful collaborations often exist with contracts of all things, like when there's money involved, and that's just also part of this whole deal. Is like actually now this has been true for 5 6 years of me, of like I do not have time for like fun projects for the most part. Even if we could work together and build something, like there has to be an end goal, and that's just because of how much work I have, and this is the business side of it after all, right? So like
Mhm.
some of the collaborations that I've had that have been really fruitful have been through the more formal, like contracts with Wizards, for example. Recently, like I've had chats kind of behind the scenes with folks within and without Wizards that present that sort of creative spark with me, where I'm like, "Ooh, this is really cool. Like this is an opportunity I'm going to pursue." And then we discuss the payment element, of course, but it's always that first like idea, like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" That's what attracts me way more than the money elements. Like the money stuff comes way after I've already decided, like, yeah, I want to make room on my desk for this because I love the creative potential of it. That's what attracts me to these things. So I think that if it were to happen with people that where payment isn't necessarily involved, and I just see someone's work and I'm like, ooh, I love what you're doing, let's get in a room together and see what happens, that kind of natural sort of collaboration, that'll happen again, primarily because I'm attracted to the potential of the idea more than I am
Mm.
anything else, right?
So start with the idea.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. It has to be something that like piques my interest in that way. Because
Yeah.
I just don't, I'm not motivated by money in the way that it sounds arrogant to say, but I'm really not motivated
No, you've
by
been on
money
the
in that
record
way.
saying multiple times, like, Rhystic Studies is exactly the size that you would like it to be at, not not bigger. I also assume not smaller, but just the way it is.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, that's kind of, you follow that hard line for a long time, and the financial support comes through in ways that you want later on. You can be picky. I'm in a position where I can be picky with the financial support because I've really crafted and curated a vision for what I want to do and how I want to work. And I know that all of that sounds super arrogant too, but like you kind of have to be creatively arrogant in order to be happy as a creative person. You just really have to be headstrong and a little bit bullish about what you want to do and how you want to do it. And
Mm.
if it's successful, if people understand the vision and respect the vision over time, you do get to like prioritize the vision over anything else. Like I found that, and I'm just following creative folks that I've loved. I've seen them exemplify this idea and be successful. So I'm like, all right, well, that is a working formula. You really don't have to just bend the knee at every ad read or contract that comes your way. Like, here's proof. So I don't know. I was watching another YouTube person who was kind of discussing this similar idea, and they were speaking more or less the same truths and like truisms that I was just speaking, and it
Mhm.
felt reinvigorating of like, okay, I'm not fully off my rails or off my
Yeah, you're
rocker
not the only
anymore.
one.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I find that empowering. I'm like, yeah, this is, I want more folks to like really think that way and really commit to their vision and their ideas, because then you get to be in charge of it. And that's the most powerful part of it, right?
Mm.
That's where you feel the most like quote unquote creatively free, is when you are in
Hmm.
charge of your vision and your work.
Mm. I think that you might call it arrogance or free or freedom as a result of arrogance, but I would just call it just being selectively disagreeable. I think society wants us to be agreeable and just say yes to a lot of things and take the well laid out path. And I think you learn in life that you just have to set boundaries for yourself. That's really it. So I don't see it so much as arrogance, so much as just being disagreeable at the right times. Because unfortunately, or at least my view is, if you're always agreeable, you get kind of taken advantage of. Then there people make demands on your time and your energy, and that's just not a very sustainable way, you know?
Yeah, I think this aligns with kind of what we're seeing. I've been thinking for like 2 or 3 months about the rise of like the indie video game developer. And I think that the indie video game developer right now is in a similar position of being selectively disagreeable, of following kind of their vision for what they want and keeping the teams small and keeping the teams really focused on like that idea and spirit, and like it's being rewarded very fruitfully, because the AAA studios that are trying to make a game for everyone are making the slop that has nothing to say, you know. And I think folks are just tired of eating that, you know. They're kind of over that. So I'm not surprised that in the culture we're finding more and more folks who are choosing to work at a smaller scale for something that is more, you know, that is more in line with their artistic vision and being rewarded for it. That's the trick. Is like, okay, anyone can go and work in a room for a year and make something that they care about, but the support on the back end to me is like, okay, there's also an audience that wants that from their creators too, you know? And that relationship between creator and audience is something I've always cared about and always prioritized myself. Like, and where I feel the most support from the folks in the Discord, like they, or the folks on the Patreon, like they just want me to keep doing whatever I'm doing, you know,
Mm-hmm.
without almost any demands. And again, that's part of the freedom that you curate when you really have something that you want to make, and you want to make it really good, and people can see that and feel that.
Mm. Also, before I forget, I think I should shout out Hbomberguy. It was through your podcast that I finally sat down and watched his masterful essay on plagiarism. So,
Mm.
for those who may not have seen it, first of all, do yourself a favor and see it. And I think I might have just watched the whole thing. I get into these zones with YouTube essays. I think that one, and also another one I watched, like the 4 hour review on the Star Wars amusement, the new
Oh
Star
yeah.
Wars attraction thing. I watched the whole thing. So this H Bomber guy video is just so, it's just so amazing. I love it when you're signal boosting, because it's weird to say that, because I'm sure a regular person that consumes YouTube should have watched that video before any Rhystic Studies video, and that's not putting any slight on your video, but like that was a very masterful video, and it's just, it speaks to like how someone can disappear for a long time, do the video that they want, and get paid off. So I just want to say that, really, thank you for suggesting that video to me. I mean, not to a lot of people, but because of the podcast, it sounds like you were suggesting it directly to me. So
Yeah, no doubt. I think it was for the folks who were ready to say yes to committing to a video that long. There are some problems with videos that long, like, you know, it's a give and take. I thought it was worth my time that I spent with it. And again, that's what ends up happening when you recommend something, is like you feel like your time spent with whatever medium it was will be time spent well to the person that, you know, you're passing it on to. that video will be what is called a foundational text. Like I think you also have to watch it more or less to understand the zeitgeist and like the pulse of YouTube in the moment. I thought there were some tremendously valuable lessons, but 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 I think that like you are a little bit remiss if you don't know what's going on in that conversation because it speaks to a greater issue that will happen in the next 10 years with the internet in general and is currently happening now. So it felt very easy to recommend for me because I just thought it was smart and funny and well made. Yeah, it's long. It's probably too long, but I don't know. I had fun with it, so whatever.
Hmm. Have you thought about doing videos like that, or maybe not 4 hours, but just disappearing for 6 months to say, "Hey, I'm working on something," and then you come back with, I don't know, fill in the blank of something that's beyond the typical Rhystic Studies video.
For sure, there's a few projects that I know would require 6 months to a year to make, even if it was like those. Some of those projects to me is where I'll start to like actually entertain the idea of bringing on a team or a small group of folks who can help me. There's projects at that scale that I cannot do at the moment because of the time and effort, and they've been ruminating for years in the background for sure. I don't think that I'll be in a position anytime soon to actually take 6 months off of this somewhat regular schedule release just because there's too many like there's too many moving parts at this moment. But I do admire the folks that can do that. They can really like spend 6 months to a year on a project. Because like you're saying, like, what is the result? The result is that you have a massive audience that flocks to the video because they know that proportionally the 4 hours that the video, length is, the amount of effort and research and required, like all of that stuff, the iceberg of work that went into producing the 4 hours of video is what you're going to walk away with. And then it catches like wildfire because it's a step above in terms of quality and efforts than the other stuff that's happening. So I don't know. I think that's also a signal. It's similar to the indie game developers who are working. Like I think there is an appetite for high effort work, right? Like we're just at that point again where it's not quantity anymore. Like folks really want curated. I just bought a subscription to a magazine for the first time in 20 years. Why? Cuz like I know that it's going to be a
A
well
print
curated
magazine or just a digital zine?
both. Like I subscribed to a newsletter and then like I ended up reading 15 articles and then, they're like, "Hey, you want the physical magazine?" I'm like, "Yeah, like send that thing to my door. I can sit down and read a really well curated group of articles, away from a screen." I don't know. There's just a little bit of this like Ouroboros of coming back to what we started from with all this stuff. And I find that really thrilling. Like I want to work in that space.
Sure. I mean, here's something that I want to know because I, I can't say all of us, but I feel like you have some magnum opus that is on the back burner. I've got some ideas that are on the back burner, but I also have this kind of fear that I could disappear. I mean, I am kind of disappeared right now because I'm not doing a podcast every week, but I'm just saying that there's this fear that the input is not commensurate to the output because I think the Hbomberguy video is fantastic, but what if I spend 4,000 hours and make a 4 hour video and it totally tanks? I just don't know how to extricate myself from needing that kind of validation because I shouldn't say you only, but we tend to see the success stories. And so do you have that fear or trepidation, or are you at the point now where it's like if it's something that's on brand with what you're doing, it'll probably land even if it's 10 hours. No, that's an extreme example, but if it's longer than usual.
I think that this speaks directly to the sort of honesty you have to have with yourself in terms of your capabilities and your output, because the first person you have to convince is yourself that this is worth your time and that what you feel will pay off in the way that you hope it will, even though you can't see the end. And folks, I think that have produced a body of work with consistent result will over time trust more and more their own abilities and efforts that this down payment of 5 months of work will produce something that resembles 5 months of work. So I think that, like, if there is fear, where is the fear located? Is the fear in your ability to do it, or is the fear located in the like the project itself? And I've always been afraid of the projects in a good way, and that's what makes me want to do them. It's similar to your marathon pursuits. Like, you would not realistically sign up for a marathon if the furthest you've run is a mile or 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers. Like, you sign up for a marathon because you can trust in your grit and determination and your training and your ability to complete it because of past results and past efforts. Like, that's the same formula at play with creative work, I think. And the folks that aren't so honest with themselves, who commit to these huge, ambitious creative projects without a body of work in the rear end, in the rearview mirror, like, those are the ones that end up with results that you're speaking about, of like, oh, I spent 4,000 hours on this video that got 500 views. It's like, well, your previous videos got 100 views. So did you think some sort of miracle was going to happen to close that gap, right?
Right.
To conclude this idea of, like, I always go back to the rock bands. Like, the rock band that's been playing bars should not realistically want to go play an arena. Like, it's just a matter of being fully honest with yourself at the very beginning. It's when you start selling out the bar, and then you have to go to the first stage up, and then you start selling out that stage, you got to go to the mid-range concert hall, and then there's demand there, and you're like, all right, well, the next logical conclusion is the arena, and that's a little bit out of my control. And maybe you're afraid to do the arena show, but, like, past efforts have suggested such that you should be afraid of the venue more than the audience that comes, right? So I don't know. I think that's where, if you find yourself afraid in a good way and afraid of the right things, and that's what draws me to projects more than how many people are gonna show up to watch it, right?
You're totally right. I haven't played enough bars, so not to totally spoil the big idea, but I'm thinking about doing longer length documentary style things, but I just don't have enough reps with playing in bars. And maybe to mix analogies, right now, what I would ultimately like to do is kind of like wanting to run an ultra marathon when I've not ever run 5K. I've only run maybe half a K or something, just in terms of where I am in that content space, right? Because we're not talking about doing a 4-hour podcast. That's a lot easier, but a 4-hour like story that you have to tell, you have to work through. I think it's not so much fear as just lack of reps and preparation. And I always believe that there's no overnight success. So I think it's just about trying to maybe finding projects first where I can play more bars and get the hours or the reps in. I think that's what it's not really the fear. I think you're right.
Yeah, and that's the empowering part. That's the part that folks are like, you have to be good. Like, the only way to get good is to do those reps. And the best part about having reps with no audience is that there's no feedback except the ones you're giving yourself. And it's really nice to be really bad at something when no one's watching, And the worst thing that could happen to you is your second project takes off and you really don't know what you're doing yet, or how you did it, or you kind of fell into it by accident, or it took off for the wrong reasons, and then suddenly there's an audience of people who are expecting something from you that you cannot provide to even yourself, on the side in the dark. So I think that the empowering part of all this is like, yeah, the reps are really fun. The reps are where you get your experience. Like, there's so many metaphors. Like, life is an MMO, life is an RPG. Like, don't go kill the dragon at level 50 if you're level 5, right? Go kill some skeletons. You'll get to level 10.
You just get smoked by the dragon.
Some loot. Like, it's all the same. It's all the same. And, like, be really empowered in the hopes that one day you'll kill the dragon. But before then, prove it to yourself a million times, and then you can have more trust in your efforts, and you're afraid of the right things.
Was there a point in time when you were Sam the Magic Man or Rhystic Studies that you knew that I could do it, or you reached some sort of level of mastery where you're like, all right, I feel good now?
I think there's been level up moments. It's more of that, just a small staircase of tiny incremental, like, ooh, this is a slightly new height that's a foot higher than the previous one. You know, it wasn't such a jump. I put myself in positions where I feel like I can do about 90% of what is being asked of me, and the 10% I don't know. This happened recently when my friend Tiziano last year asked if I would like to curate a magic exhibition. And I'm like, well, the Venn diagram between the work that I do for Rhystic Studies and what will be required of the magic exhibition is about 60 to 70%. So that 30% is stuff I've never done. Like you have to reframe your writing style when you're writing for little captions underneath an exhibition piece, you know, an artifact or a piece of art or whatever. It's like, okay, that's a reframing of something I'm doing, a slightly different way to approach it, a slightly different methodology, but more or less it's the same. The subject matter is kind of the same. We interviewed a bunch of people. It's like, well, I've interviewed people for Rhystic Studies, but we have to do it specifically about the early years of magic, you know? So I was thrilled about that. Again, the money was not even an issue or was not even involved in most of the discussions at the beginning. It's like, you want to curate a magic exhibition? And I said, yeah, absolutely, because the work that I've done resembles the work that will be required of me, but there's going to be that 30% stuff that I really have to do for the first time. And that's the stuff that I want to do. So I think that to answer your question, these small incremental growth moments of growth have been kind of cumulative more than they have been like this skyrocket of difference between two experiences. If you keep signing up for work that is 80 to 90% what you know and 10 to 20% what you don't, over time, it's all of those new little tips and tricks that you do it. And sometimes you have to assign it to yourself. Like I remember in 2018-ish, every video I wanted to learn one new way to animate something just to have in the tool belt. And it didn't matter if I was going to use it again, but I'd come to a sequence and say like, all right, this might be a good opportunity to learn something new just on the back end, you know? It's not like the whole video had to be 50 new animations. It was literally just one new animation per video is what I assigned myself. And, you know, over time that becomes part of the editing language that you acquire, right? Um, Doing panels at the Magic Cons, like I've been a teacher, I've spoken in front of audiences, I can lead a conversation, but the texture of that conversation and the location being on a stage is something I've never done. Like, let's go do it. Let's try it, you know? And you do the first one and you're like, gosh, that was very disorienting and it did not go as well as I wanted it to based on our rehearsals. Let's go do it again. And then the second one was like 100 times better, right? So I think that's what the growth is it's so minute and you have to keep track of it because over time you can see that the tree has grown, right? But it's those incremental advantages and bushes and leaves that came out over the course of 3 or 4 years where that you don't notice when it's happening.
Yeah, it's also interesting because the audience doesn't know that at all. They only see the output. They have no idea what goes into the process unless you willingly open yourself and say, okay, I worked on this unknown 10% like you're doing now. I'm just wondering though, how did you come up with this mindset? Was it just through academic life, or did you always have that in you to kind of almost seek discomfort in a way?
I think it comes through years and years of playing guitar because the guitar is the ultimate feedback machine. Like if you suck and you know it immediately. There's no delay in that. So one of my favorite bands is Coheed and Cambria, if not my favorite band. The lead singer, Claudio Sanchez, in an interview, I remember this 15 years ago, was talking about how he kind of found music and how he got into playing and singing music. And he speaks about his father a lot. And he's like, back in my father's day in the 60s and 70s, if you wanted to play, you had to be really good live. Like that was the only way to be a musician. You could not be a studio musician. You could not just like make records in your house. Like you had to go out and play shows and you had to be super good live. That was his whole conviction. He's like, so for Coheed, I just wanted to make sure that our live show is better than the records, is better than anything you've ever heard, because that was the proving ground, you know, for the rockers in the 60s and 70s and the 80s, whatever. So I've kind of found the same conviction with my guitar playing of like, all right, don't hide behind the effects. Like play that without any, like be really honest with yourself. Like, how good are you playing? How well are you playing this? So if you have that kind of determination to be good, you're gonna you're gonna force yourself to be good. Like, be good live. You have to be so good live, right? And I think that came
Right.
through in it just transferred in the work of everything you do, you know? Like, I just
Right.
want the videos to stand on their own. Like, what if I remove I've been on this pursuit lately of just like, what if I remove all of the fancy visuals? What if I remove all of the fancy transitions and the music? Like, what is the bare bones here? And the bare bones in
Really
my
stripped
eyes,
down. This
yeah,
is like the unplugged.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, what is actually holding this whole thing together? Is it fancy visuals? People say, no, I listen to your videos, I don't watch them. It's like, okay, the
Mhm.
visuals are just a fluff. You know, maybe the music is
Or
involved.
now, as
Do it.
I'm doing, I'm reading the whole video on Substack, and it's
Yeah,
great in
sure.
text.
And that the reading the script on Substack kind of points to how stylistically a little bit different the videos are when they are narrated versus when they are written out. Because I would certainly frame a lot of the stuff differently if it was just text. So I think
Hmm.
that the key for me is like make the script really strong when it is narrated, like such that it is narrated and that is the best form to experience it.
Mm.
But that's basically the idea of like, all right, how good are you? Like, how good are you? When you start framing it that way, no tricks and no bells and whistles. Like, what did the videos stand on? They stand on the research and the writing, and that's it. So
Hmm.
make that the best part, and the rest is just bells and whistles.
Are you still getting a fair amount of constructive feedback? Because I can imagine now that you're at a certain size, you're probably getting a lot of comments that's just like, great video, or I mean, these are the great comments like, oh, I love this video. But I mean, I just wonder because, when you're doing creative work like a video essay or an essay, um, it's not like an instrument. It's not like you can hear yourself right away. I know you're saying you're putting constraints on how you do it, but that's still the creation process. So when a thing comes out, is it is it difficult to avoid complacency? Is there a way that you still try to keep yourself honest with the feedback loop?
Yes, and again, it comes back to this feeling of like you have to be the most honest in the room, and it's hard to do that when you've accumulated a following of folks who will just be excited about anything you do. In fact, that's like that is poisonous candy, you know? Like that's the junk food type of thing that you have to also you're so right that I have to eliminate the noise on one end of folks that don't have my best interest and just come to leave a nasty comment just cuz. And on the other, I have to also eliminate the folks that are just excited that there's a new video out and they think that what I do is the greatest thing ever. Like that's noise too for me. So you're
Mm.
right that it does get harder the more there is passion and enthusiasm behind your work. And the one person I have to impress always is myself. Like that's just that starts to be a question of work ethic and conviction on your side because you kind of have a soft cushion landing in a certain way. Some folks get cozy in that and they start to ship stuff in, but I start to
Mm.
get really irritated when I feel like I'm doing something that I've already done before. You know, it's not just
Mm.
boredom, it's like irritation for me. So, I think the recent video, the lantern video, that was not my favorite video I've ever done. That was some people's favorite video I've ever done, and that surprised me because I was like,
Mm.
"Oh, I don't think that was I don't want that to be fully representative of what I'm doing." I thought it was well done. I thought the story came together, but to me it was more of like we've seen this before, you know? If I'm being honest with myself, like I've already done this thing before and I felt it during because the during became sludgy and I'm like, I've done this
Mm.
already. I don't want to do this
Mm.
same song over and over and over again, you know?
You feel that, don't you, as you're doing it?
Oh yeah, and you feel it, and that's what starts to bog you down, and that's why I'm so convicted to do stuff that's new because when you do that new stuff, you're so invigorated about it, you know, and the work kind of takes care of itself. Like that's really the payoff for me.
Right. I mean, to be fair, I feel like the one good thing about the Lantern Control video that I enjoyed, even though I didn't play Lantern Control, I was only exposed to watching it. But how do I put it? It is and isn't a video about Lantern Control. I think that's really the whole concept. And I feel like Magic players are sometimes too literal. They get caught up in like, oh, you're talking about my favorite card or deck or whatever it is. but it's really not about that. And I don't think Rhystic Studies was ever about that. So I feel like it's almost like it's weird because it's ironic that the people who the video would really connect with are also the people that are probably not your core audience, where they might just be like a one and done, like, oh, there's a video about my favorite deck, but it's not really about the deck. And I think you know this better than anybody because you made it.
That's actually true of what I'm trying to do all the time.
Exactly. And that is a good thing to do all the time, by the way. That is actually a good thing to make it more about the topic, transcend the topic. Yeah.
I think the next video I'm working on is exactly that spirit. Like, it's going to be about something, but it's truly about something else. When I did the Gifts Ungiven video a couple years ago, that was originally just like, how goofy was this play that Frank Karsten did, in the World Champs or whatever.
To just get the 2 cards. Yeah. Or whatever
just get the 2 cards. I was like, oh, that's a cool moment. And then over time, through working with that video, I was like, oh, this actually is a video about Frank Karsten. It's not about that play. It's about his life and the way he thinks about Magic. And my favorite shot of that video is the very end. And unfortunately, YouTube clipped off the music I was using was later copyrighted, which pissed me off. But the music is supposed to swell at this moment where it's Frank laughing and smiling in the World Championship match. And then I cut to the interview with him, and he's laughing and smiling in the exact same way, like same facial expressions, and it's a 20-year gap. And I'm like, that's the video. The video is about Frank Karsten. It's not about Gifts Ungiven or searching libraries or judge rules. It's not about any of that. When people get caught up in the minutia of the details of that video, I'm like, you missed the point. It's not about Gifts Ungiven, okay? And a lot of these videos are like that. Like, that's I'm trying to humanize this whole thing. Like, that's why people get moved by the Red Deck Wins video. I don't give a shit about 1-drops, okay? That is not the point. I'm not talking about how good Eidolon of the Great Revel was. I'm talking about the spirit of the essence of people who like to play like this. They are launching themselves off 20 stairs and getting tattoos and running 800-meter races. That's the spirit, right? So when folks understand what the meta narrative is, or it's a distraction technique. It's like, ooh, look at this firework.
Right.
But then you realize, oh, the memories were everyone around me eating hot dogs and cotton candy on July 4th and country music is in the air. Like, that's what it was actually about. So you're so right, and that's always been the spirit. It's like, yeah, the video's about Lantern Control, but really it's about these people who have been playing Magic for 25, 30 years, and they were confronted with a conundrum of a deck, that completely disregarded what they thought about the game that they knew so much about, supposedly. And that's where Justin Cohen and Sam Black come in. It's like, these guys are the most brilliant people and thinkers about Magic, and this deck stupefied them. That, to me, is thrilling. That's the thrilling part of that video.
Does it bother you that, by my estimation, probably 60% or more of your audience is just, they don't really get you?
That could be true.
What a leading question.
Yeah, no doubt. It could be true. I have faith that over time they will. Folks, maybe the first time they see the videos, especially if it's one of the weirder ones, they don't get it. That's fine. I don't think I'm working in such an abstract space that you can't really understand. And the proof to me is that folks who don't play Magic come and stumble upon the video and they can follow along. Like, that to me indicates that at the end of the day, I'm telling stories and making documentaries about a card game and the people who play it. The drive for me, and there's always that twinkling idea in the distance to make something that does have that effect of, like, 70% of the people who follow me and understand what I'm doing don't understand this project. Like, that to me is thrilling. But I have faith and hope that even if they can't point to it or they can't illustrate it,
you're in their subconscious somehow.
Yeah, there's something there, I think that's a good spot to be in, because that's how I feel about my favorite art and music and stuff. It's like, I can't really apply an intelligent, superstructure to this, but it speaks to me in a way, and it speaks for itself in that way.
For sure. By the way, I see the guitars in the back. I mean, are you getting increasingly more serious with your guitar playing? For some reason, I feel like you're posting more and more guitar solo videos, and I think you have another channel of guitar playing, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's always just for fun. That'll always just be for fun. I don't get my own music. I just play other people's music. It's like fully a hobby. It's one that I've had forever. It's a staple in my life. Recently though, I've kind of diversified my little guitar collection because I wanted like basically for years I had three of more or less the same type of guitar, and now I have five totally different guitars, and I'm so stoked about the collection in a way that I haven't been my whole life.
Is this like, I mean, I don't understand guitars, but is this like the musician's version of running shoes where you just have to have different ones for different occasions? Like
Fully, fully, 100%.
really?
This is also probably what Marshall says about his watches. This is what Jay Leno says about his cars. Like, it's the same sort of pathology to me. But the guitars are in a good spot. I love my little collection as it stands right now. I've got a baritone from Revolta that I just picked up that I'm in love with. I got an 8-string Ibanez. I have this like semi-hollow, the red one here, the D'Angelico semi-hollow that is kind of slanted towards like jazz music, but I play it for other reasons. I have a nice Japanese Telecaster, and then the white guitar is the one I bought for my 21st birthday. So I've had that forever. That's my
Wow.
that's my ride or die. Like, in a house fire,
Okay.
I'm grabbing that. The rest can burn.
Okay. Okay. And maybe a skateboard, or are you off that
No,
now?
the skateboard can burn too. I think that's too poetic. Actually, I'd prefer that the skateboard go down in flames.
Okay. Do you name your guitars?
No. I thought I would like 10 years ago. I'm like, I should start naming these, but now, no, there's no chance.
Is there some sort of code where you're only supposed to name your guitars once you get to a certain level of guitar playing, or is that just
Actually,
like
it's
anybody
less
can
that.
name their
I
guitars?
say, I would say that it's less that and more of, I think it was part of the culture of the guitarist with a capital G, There was an era in music where folks became more known specifically because they were a guitarist and less because of the music or the bands they were playing in. I think that's passed a little bit. I think the culture shifted away from that, and the remnants of that I think are from that era. So
Yeah. So your favorite guitarist is somebody from Coheed?
yes, yeah. Claudio Sanchez is the lead singer and rhythm guitarist of Coheed and Cambria, and there's like 3 or 4 guitarists over the course of my life who have taught me the most about guitar, and I know like 95% of Coheed songs because I'm just kind of a diehard fan of that band. But yeah, Claudio is definitely the most influential in terms of the guitar playing.
Okay. Is one of your guitars based on a guitar that he uses or similar?
It used to be. I used to have what is called the Gibson Explorer, and that's his signature guitar, more or less. I will say that the white one resembles a guitar that he plays again, that he used to play back in the early 2000s, and he's kind of brought back and revitalized. So it's a little similar. He also has a double neck guitar that is exactly that model, but with 2 necks. But yeah, I've also tried to like not be such a fanboy that I'm playing exactly one for one the same guitar. He has cool taste in guitars, so it's sometimes hard
Right.
not to.
Right, right. So you've never thought about I'm just genuinely curious. You never thought about just making your own compositions or writing your own songs or
There's riffs always, but I just don't have the same like follow through with guitar and with music that I do with other things. Like that was part of me being honest with myself 15 years ago when I'm like, I would love to be in a rock band or I'd love to make music, and then I just had no conviction to finish music. I have a buddy who like I constantly tease because he will script out a whole video, he'll narrate it, he'll edit 85% of it and then abandon the project. And there's probably 100 videos of his like this in the backlog. And I'm like, dude, just finish the project. And then I think,
Yeah.
oh, but I'm the same way with music. So
with
whatever.
different types of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I'm at this point where like, yeah, I love that music is now my hobby away from everything else. And it'll always be there for me in ways that aren't creatively draining or spiritually draining. That's my energy. That's the stuff that I come back to that's really therapy too. Like, I can tell in my body and my soul if I haven't played the guitar in 2 weeks. So I go and do an hour playing guitar. I'm like, okay, I feel centered again.
Right.
It's similar with
Right.
running for you, no doubt. Like if I told you to not run for 2 weeks, you'd go crazy.
And running for you too, right? Are you back on the train or the whatever metaphor?
Yeah, no, well, right now it's so hot in Austin that I've just been doing a stationary bike inside, and it'll probably be that way for a couple months. I will say one of the benefits is that my legs just feel genuinely better. Like running is so punishing. You get all these pains and cramps and like tie-ups in your legs that like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the hardest part about it for sure. But I usually run in the winter here now at this point in my like quote unquote running career. But yeah, I exercise every day in some form. It's just running in Austin in the summer is impossible. It's just punishment. Like folks, how they feel about running in general as being punishing. That's how I feel about running right now here.
That's how I feel about. That's why I don't think I could live in Austin, because if I just walked outside or even stood outside, I think I would just melt.
Yeah.
I've heard it's pretty intense.
It's intense, and it's intense for 5 months. Like we are firmly in summer now, and it's going to be that way till mid-October at the earliest. So
Wow.
yeah, we're in that season, and you have to find other activities during the day, especially for someone like me that just, like you said, melts. I melt in the heat. So so I've been staying inside on the stationary bike.
So everybody just has AC in Austin or a fan or
Oh,
some
totally.
really good.
It's impossible to live here without it. No doubt. I mean, that's
Okay.
true of a lot of the American South. You know, Atlanta's kind of notorious for this same sort of heat, and Louisiana, even through Phoenix, even though it's a dry heat, Las Vegas, same idea, same problem.
Just going back to some of your podcasts and writings. I mean, I forgot to ask this question earlier, so I'll try to fill it in. Just what do you think you've learned from doing the Rhystic cast? I think it's been what, 18 or 17 episodes by now?
Yeah.
Like, are there certain kind of level ups or incremental things that you've felt as you're doing them now over the months and years?
Yeah, I think that what I've learned is that it is part of my process more than I thought it would be. Like what I was speaking about earlier of it just being a space where I can deposit a lot of the ideas or irritations or, you know, stories that I have no other outlet for. It's more that. And it is a little self-serving in that way. But I think that's been the biggest lesson from it. I've also learned that I can just speak in a microphone for an hour, like kind of by myself, which I think my fiance is very happy that I do, and not directly.
It's completely unedited, right? I think there was one instance during an episode where I think you had to plug in the power supply, but it sounds like it's all just one take. Is that true?
Yeah, it's very much, that's also in the spirit of it. Like that was a limitation I put on myself because I could very easily see myself making that an overproduced thing. And I'm like, no, this has to literally be like, do it live. You know, that comes back to that. So exercising that muscle and the muscle of restraint to not make it perfect, and also being in the headspace where you've gathered a bunch of ideas that you can speak about for an hour straight. I think that'll pay dividends in other creative endeavors later down the line. For now, it's just a way to let loose a little bit. But yeah, being one take is important for me so that I can just do it and not think too hard about it.
How do you organize your thoughts when you're doing one take? Do you have just a mental outline of what you want to talk about, or?
Yeah, sometimes it's an accumulation of things. I keep a notes app on the phone, but when I'm doing it live, I've been lists are now like the most, writing down this is a mess right now because I have forced myself to not get rid of this or rewrite these tasks until I finish them all.
You're crossing them out as well? Is that what it is?
I'm crossing out the things. I'll write down my stuff and then I'll cross them out when I do them. And that's like, Katie, my fiance, taught me this a year ago. She's like, just write it down on a list. And I did not realize how motivated I am by lists until I started writing them down, and they're kind of ugly. I feel like they're in my way, so to get them out of my life, I have to finish the tasks. You know, you hold yourself hostage in this way. But for the podcast, I'll just write 6, 7 things down. I just threw the one away that I did yesterday, but yeah, it's just a quick like topic list or general things I want to highlight, talk about, you know, very short form lists. They're miraculous in terms of productivity. So highly recommend writing down a bullet point list.
Right. not to be Ali Abdal or anything, but have you figured out do you feel very comfortable now with your productivity system, just in terms of lists and how you organize your? Oh, actually, I think you mentioned that how you try to have certain days like Monday, Wednesday, or certain days be dedicated for things, right? Is that
Yeah.
still the system that you're going with?
Yeah, big time. And I've it's funny you asked this right now because Katie's been away for 2 days. Something maybe other folks who live with their partners can relate to this. Katie and I both experience being alone in a house as like you just have this massive executive function like output. Like I just have cleaned the house, I've reorganized the closet, I got rid of a bunch of clothes. Like I just went full ham. I hung up a bunch of pictures. Something about Katie being gone always results in this. And it's the same when I'm gone. Like Katie will just change stuff when I'm gone. It's like I'm out of the way so she gets to do what she's been wanting to do. So like, yeah, I part of this whole like the last 2 weeks I've been doing a lot of this kind of stuff, just getting rid of stuff I don't want. I finally invested in a new computer that I've been meaning to for a year and a half.
Right.
I bought a new
Right, the
monitor.
gaming rig, but for video editing.
Yeah,
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 exactly. Yeah, and that's sitting next to me humming along. I bought a new monitor that's on the way. There's a few other like desk kind of accessories and accoutrement that I'm trying to streamline, but sometimes you do get in that block where your setup is not really conducive to the work you want to do. I kind of outgrew
mm,
this setup, and the hardest part is just forcing yourself to like make that first change. And then after that first change, it's like 50
yeah,
changes. So I'm in this
yeah.
metamorphosis, like butterfly moment right now where like most of the stuff that has been clogging my mental and creative energy is out of the way. And I'm ready to like hit the ground running again for the rest of the year.
Okay. I don't know if you've ever read the Atomic Habits book by James Clear, but basically one of the ideas is like you need to prime your environment so that you're productive. Like for example, if you need to work on your computer, it needs to be like really close to like the optimal place so that you can easily just go up to it and start doing stuff. So do you have that laid out now for this is like some real behind the scenes shit, but like are you do you have like your work setup? Is it like super efficient so there's like no friction
Mm.
between you and the the work
Yeah,
basically?
big time. I don't know. I've not read Atomic Habits, but I fully have felt that over the course of my life. Going back to the guitar, though that's there because I can just pick it up and go. And my
Right.
whole
It's
rig
not
is
in the garage or you don't have to like
there's no
go extra.
cases, there's nothing involved
Yeah.
in that regard. All I have to do is flick on one button there and plug it in, and I can play. And that's so important. You'll find that in guitar tips, like videos. People will make videos about like make sure that your guitar is as accessible as possible. It's the only way you'll play, and it's so
Uh,
true. So you can apply that to everything. And I've always made sure that like the difficulty to do the work is not inhibited by the getting to the work, accessing the work or whatever. But
right.
yeah, part of the changes I've made recently of just like I want to make that take away that friction that's not aiding the creativity fully. You have to. Otherwise,
Mm.
if you have to go and dig around to get your laptop and then you have to move stuff out of the way to get to your desk, like, no. I've often joked that my ideal office is a desk and a chair in an empty room. Like that to me is
Mm.
the fullest form of reducing the creative or the friction to just access the creativity.
Mm. So it sounds like you're close to that
I'm getting
already.
closer. I will say the hardest part has been just sharing an office space with Katie because she's an accountant. She's on calls all the time. Like, I'm only here when I'm editing videos. For the most part, I'll write the
Mm.
scripts and stuff out, in other like in a different room by myself, that kind of stuff. So that's been the hardest part. Like, if I had a dedicated office space, that would be the max. And that'll
Mm.
come down. We have to organize some stuff, but that's hopefully in the plans soon. Um, so yeah, that's that's the biggest inhibitor. Funny enough, is that I just share office space with Katie, and she knows that, and she
Mm.
feels that when I'm in the room too. So it's just the
Mm.
reality of where we are at the moment in our lives.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe in the future the Rhystic Studies studio or
Gosh,
dedicated
I
office
hope.
space.
It's so hard to find spots in Austin, believe it or not, that I could set up in.
Mm.
They're so expensive or just like inaccessible. The most
Mm.
realistic option for me is just renting another studio apartment, but I really
Right.
want like I know it's
You also don't want to make like a long trek to that place,
yes,
wherever it
yes,
is.
that too. Yeah, I want it to be relatively close, but I really do just want an empty white room, like one room. I don't want anything else, and it's hard. It's surprisingly hard to just
Right.
find an empty white room to rent.
Right. We need the holodeck ASAP. Just you can step into an empty white room,
Gosh,
and when you're
gosh,
done, you just come out.
I
That's
know.
what Star Trek is all about.
You're right.
So
You're so right about that.
yeah, yeah. So maybe the thing I'll end with is this might even be something you'll talk about in the future cast of yours, but what the heck? Because I think you said one of your maxims or mottos for the year is get out, and so I'm interpreting that to be like get out there, right? It's really like optimize for putting yourself out there. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but that's how I understand it. Is like optimize for just trying new things or being in new places metaphorically and literally. So are you feeling that, we're kind of halfway through the year. Are you feeling that, it's in a good, are you in a good space right now with that? And like both now and also heading into the second half of the year?
Yeah, I think it is compelling and it is a little bit of a metaphor, but it's also very literal. Like if I have to make a decision and the inclination is to not do it, tell myself to get out and do it, right? So this year has been probably it will be the most packed year in terms of travel, in terms of obligations, in terms of all the stuff. We're getting married later in the year. We have 2 other weddings to attend before that. I was on a plane I've been probably in 10 trips and it's only June, So the get out thing is like actually,
Wow.
it's been more of like I would love to stay in for a moment at this moment.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, it's been really effective. And what we're thinking about is like, okay, if we're gonna start having kids next year, like actually I do have to take advantage of all these trips and all these opportunities. I'll be flying to Amsterdam. I'll see you there in a couple of weeks. I guess 3 weeks from now. That was like a trip that Katie and I really looked at and said, is this necessary? Should we be doing this? And you're like, well, now's the time, if any time, right? So it's been pretty taxing and exhausting in a lot of ways, but like this is the first weekend I've been able to be at home, which is why I was like cleaning up my area and getting rid of stuff. And already I'm like, yeah, this is the right pace and the right thing to be doing this year for sure. Like while we have it and while we just have a cat, like we got to be doing this right now. So those moments of, recharging have been really pivotal to this. I have to make a decision on if I'm going to go to the Vegas show or not. That's also on my list right now. I got to decide Vegas. So I'll decide that today. Probably going to go because I can't resist.
Okay.
I just can't resist.
So I might see you there as well. I'm also on the fence, but
Yeah,
I know it's going to be wild. It's going to be, it almost makes me not want to go to Amsterdam because I'm thinking if I go to one, it should be Vegas. But on the other hand, I don't know if I can go to Vegas because I don't know about you, but it's hard for me to plan that far ahead,
That's a big strength of Katie's that I don't have. I got about 1 week or 2 week ahead in the bandwidth for me. I can do about that much at a time, and it makes planning 6 months ahead very hard. So that's been the most difficult part of wedding planning is Katie's so oriented to October, and I'm like, I have 5 trips in the next 6 weeks. Like, can I chill out for a second, whatever. But I think Vegas is more like I have an email pending that I have to respond to. So like I actually do have to plan for it right now. And I love planning Vegas. I love it. People that have been to Vegas with me know that I show up with a full itinerary with reservations and like stuff to do. The whole trip is ready. It's one of my favorite things to plan, so that one isn't wearing down as much for me. It's just more of it's a decision of like, do I want to add one more thing to the queue this year? Just in terms of my energy and efforts. But I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know. Maybe you have to hire security for Vegas or something. Yeah. I know that you have mentioned, how, and I'm saying this without any like arrogance on your part whatsoever. Like it really is like I can really imagine if like to show a little bit of empathy, I can imagine being in your shoes and just being kind of mobbed all the time. So I feel like that's also like an extra. It's got to be an extra drain on anyone's battery. I'm really not trying to say this like a woe is Sam or anything like that. And I know you don't mean that when you talk about it, but it's just that's what actually happens. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you need like I don't know. Maybe you need to create a personal space for yourself, or
Yeah, the
somehow.
the need for handlers is starting to become real, not just with me, with other folks. Like we had a couple of handlers at the signing table in Chicago, and that was the first.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. That's
Yeah,
good
that was
then.
the first time where I felt like, oh, this is useful because you can do so many signatures. Maybe there's folks that didn't get their stuff signed. The handler comes in and basically escorts you away from the table so that you don't stay there, right? It's just logistics. It's just pragmatic. I think a lot of folks really need handlers at these events now, and I felt a little bit of retribution last week when I was in Dallas at DreamHack that the pro StarCraft players all had handlers. And it was not
Mm,
a, partially a celebrity thing. These guys are the best in the world. Of course, folks are going to get excited to see them and meet them. But like, yeah, like Cyril needed somebody to move him around the hall. Like that's just the way it is at this point
mm,
with personalities or significant figures in any sort of space. And that's probably
yeah.
true of all conventions. So I'm at the point now where I might send that up the ladder, up the chain, at Magic Cons of like, yeah,
You should.
it could
I
be,
think that's a totally legit request.
yeah, it
Yeah.
could be useful because it's kind of like I've said that before of like, well, if I have to use a restroom, I got to plan 30 minutes in advance at this point,
Oh my
stuff like
gosh.
that, or get water, or
Okay.
go and eat food. Even when I'm eating food, I'm like, there's folks that want to talk.
Right.
And that does
Right.
drain the social battery. It can also be reinvigorating. It's not just all one side. Like sometimes those interactions end up being some of my favorite interactions of the con. So you can't eliminate
Right.
them entirely, right? Otherwise, you're just
Yeah.
floating around an isolated bubble. And why are you there in the first
Yeah.
place? So for the moment, I'm still just like really enjoying that balance of like this is
Right.
draining me, but it's also fulfilling me. But for certain things, I think like handlers will actually be a necessity at this point.
I mean, if it's any consolation, and I know it's not. Like, I feel like you have just the right amount of celebrity where
Oh,
it's you are recognized only at certain places, and that's my assumption that you're not going to be recognized walking to the grocery store, because that's a whole nother level of thing you don't want. So
Yeah. Oh no, it's great. I can compartmentalize the whole thing and again prepare for it for a weekend and then come back to my normal life and be a normal dude walking around, and that's truly the best. Like that is actually the best.
okay. Well, if you ever need a handler, I can work on that.
All right.
Like someone I can get the training or whatever. I have no idea. I'm just talking out of my ass, but I can be your handler for Vegas, sure. And
Let's
then
go.
I'll probably just be like, Sam, I can't be your handler anymore after the first day. Like this is too much. I have to ward off people. So yeah.
Yeah, it does take a little bit of an assertive personality for sure, and that's kind of tough. So, but thank you for the offer.
Total joke. I'm not built for that.
Oh, of course. Neither am I, truthfully.
Part of getting to a certain age is knowing yourself, and I am not cut out to be a handler or security.
100%. Same
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. But yeah, Sam, it's been great catching up, chatting with you, and looking forward to Amsterdam. And I wish you all the best, as always.
Thank you. Thanks so much again for making the time. It's great to speak with you, James.